Hello, my name is Hassan Sorrells, and this is the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast, Shorts. There's no co-host on these Shorts episodes. These are now around 6 to 8 minute long observations, ideas, thoughts, or rants about the literature, philosophy, psychology, and even the theology of leadership. Because listening to me talk about leadership for now around 6 to 8 minutes is still better than reading and trying to understand yet another business book. Even that business book that has been sitting in your Amazon queue that you just haven't been able to bring yourself to purchase for around the last 6 months. You had to know that I was going to address it all through the lens of leadership at some point in time. So I guess that point in time is now. In January of 2020, a mysterious upper respiratory virus was released from a wet lab in Wuhan, China. We're still not entirely sure how it was released or why, but the virus was deemed highly contagious. It was transmitted via coughed droplets of mucus and was more deadly than the common flu. And it was coming not just to the United States of America, but also to countries around the globe. As the virus began to spread worldwide due to global air travel, leaders in government and the nationalized health services around the globe leaped into action. After all, there hadn't been an opportunity like this to demonstrate what postmodern science and, of course, postmodern leadership could do against a deadly virus like this one since the Spanish flu pandemic well over 100 years ago. The actions and recommendations from the governments to the populations of the countries they ostensibly served sounded reasonable at first. Stay home if you're sick, socially distance from other people, wash your hands, 6 weeks to flatten the curve, etc., etc. And then gradually, and then all at once, the ratcheting process began. The recommendations became more sinister, particularly as people, individuals, and countries began to push back on the origin of the virus, its spread, its level of deadliness, and who was impacted the most and how. The recommendations eventually became orders. In China, sick people were tested every day. In Australia, people were not only locked in their houses, some were also sent to special hospital locations that appeared suspiciously like concentration camps from World War II. And in the United States, massive lockdowns of businesses, schools, government offices, and even public places and events controlled the populace and then corralled them into smaller and smaller areas with less and less mobility, like their homes. None of this is disputable, and all of this played out live in front of all of our eyes on social media. Then came the recommendations to wear masks and face coverings that gradually morphed into mandates by local, state, and federal governments and private entities that were enforced through rapacious social norming, rapacious social isolation, and even in some cases through the force of police and legal and regulatory power. And then, in the late part of the summer of 2020, there began to be rumors of a shot via Operation Warp Speed that could quote-unquote cure the worst, most damaging impacts of the virus. The kind of impacts that lead to overwhelmed hospitals, shortages of ventilators, and exhausted nurses and doctors dealing with the impact of sick people flooding hospitals, particularly in the obese and horrifically out of shape Western countries. None of this is disputable, and all of this played out live on social media as well as through the dominant mainstream media. And during all of this, there were constant updates on the news from doctors, research scientists, civil bureaucrats, and others, insisting that they were making the right decisions in the right order right now, in spite of their admitted overwhelming ignorance of how fast the virus was spreading, their personal lack of knowledge about where the virus originated, and their sincere efforts to reduce the number of deaths in societies across the globe. None of this is disputable, and all of this played out real time across every media outlet any individual could find, from their phones to the screens at the airport to watch or listen to. And in support of these positions, we out here, the hoi polloi, began to recognize certain names, like Dr. Anthony Fauci and many others who had previously been obscure research scientists or nameless bureaucrats, who now could step out into the limelight to grab their 15 minutes of fame. And that's where the leadership failures truly began, in real time, online, for everyone to see. From Dr. Anthony Fauci to former Governor of New York Andrew Cuomo, from Xi Jinping, the communist leader of China, to Donald Trump, the President of the United States. From New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern to Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum. From local civic leaders to high-level corporate leaders, the failures of leadership from the beginning of January 2020 until the time of this recording are glaringly obvious and breathtakingly shocking. If you have the courage to see those failures, the wherewithal to be shocked by them, and the clarity and candor to call them out. But in case you're wondering, here are the top 5 leadership failures we all observed in real time and continue to observe from then to now around the virus of unknown origin from an unknown place. Number 5, a lack of trust in the wisdom of the general public. From mortality rates to truths about morbidity, the lack of trust in the great unwashed populations perishing due to the impacts of the virus was broad and deep among leaders at all levels. Number 4, a high belief in the power of media algorithms to control information. From Google to Facebook, from LinkedIn to podcasts on YouTube, even films and news media coverage, leaders in positions of power leveraged their ability, their power to influence, shape, and morph public opinion via tech companies and entertainment outlets. And the companies and entertainment outlets played right along in order to preserve their access to power. Number 3, general overreach on mandates designed to enforce compliance. Mandates, from mask wearing to taking the jab in order to work, were leveraged by leaders in all arenas to influence individual behavior, buy collective group loyalty, ensure mass compliance with rules, and to tamp down unapproved social unrest. Number 2, overwhelming and obvious inconsistency of enforcement of compliance with mandates. Look, if you wanted to protest police shootings of unarmed black men in America in 2020, in Portland, Seattle, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Dallas, New York, Miami, or Boston, there was absolutely no problem with gathering en masse to express your outrage via rioting, burning, and looting. But if you wanted to vote out the bums leading us collectively, particularly in the United States during an election year, it was nakedly obvious that you had to stay home, in your home, on lockdown, and preferably with a mask on. Number 1, the lack of ability or interest in drawing people together. Sure, there were advertisements and marketing that stated we're quote-unquote all in this together, but in a cynical, media-saturated, and unserious age such as ours, worldwide and especially in Western countries, such an appeal from leaders, and it really was a marketing appeal at the end of the day, was greeted with rank and outright disbelief. From emergency care nurses dancing in TikTok videos, to teachers rioting in masks about racial injustice, to people being yelled at in Target for not wearing a mask quote-unquote properly, to even people moving out of states and countries that appear to be getting less free, leaders seemed obliquely uninterested in managing or even addressing competently the knock-on effects of their pronouncements, their mandates, and their policies and they seemed really uninterested in inspiring anyone to be drawn together anywhere. The sad, sobering, and scary fact is that it will take at least the remainder of this current decade of the 2020s for leaders in the West and leaders globally to quote-unquote reset from the disastrous behaviors, the disastrous leadership behaviors they displayed during the year of 2020. The question that remains unanswered, and that will be unanswered for a long while, is this one. Have they learned, or are they going to double down when the next pandemic shows up? And well, that's it for me. Thank you for listening and subscribing to the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast. If you're listening to this on any of the major podcast players like iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, please go ahead and leave us a 5-star review and write a little bit in there. A couple of sentences is good enough. That actually helps us game those algorithms that I was just maybe addressing. And, of course, it helps us grow the show. Tell all your family, tell all your friends, and tell the leaders in your life that you know that need to be listening to this show that this show exists. By the way, if you want to get started on the leadership path yourself, or you know some people who need to go on the leadership path, HSCT Publishing, the home company of Leadership Toolbox and Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast, can help you and your team do that. So check out our training webinars, coaching services, and more at leadershiptoolbox.us. We are remote, we're live, we're in person, we're on video, and we've got leadership development solutions for your civic group, nonprofit staff, public sector staff, or even your private sector leaders. And of course, you're going to want to check out our video-based subscription service at leadingkeys.com. That's leadingkeys.com for leadership development on demand. You don't like videos, you don't like training, but you really like the podcast? Well, I would also recommend reading a book. Matter of fact, I'd recommend reading my most recent book, 12 Rules for Leaders, The Foundation of Intentional Leadership. You can get that in paperback, hardcover, or as an ebook on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Ingram Spark, and any other place that you order books online. Finally, of course, we're on YouTube just like everybody else is. We'd love to have you help us grow the YouTube channel, so like and subscribe to the video version of this podcast on the HSCT Publishing channel on YouTube. Just search for HSCT Publishing, or you can search for Leadership Toolbox and hit the subscribe button. Subscribing helps us grow the show, as it does with the audio, just is the same with the video. All right, that's it for me.